Now, it will be a formidable feat of construction.
The creation of HS2 will be the biggest infrastructure project in Europe. The first new intercity railway to be built north of London in over a century.
A promotional video there for the UK's second high-speed rail line, called High-Speed 2 or HS2 for short. The first one already links the UK capital to the Channel Tunnel and the European continent. HS2 will be a new line connecting London first with England's second biggest city, Birmingham, then further north to Manchester and Leeds later, with trains travelling at up to 360 kilometres an hour. The first services are scheduled to run in 2026. Supporters say the project will not only reduce journey times and overcrowding on existing lines, but also provide a big economic boost to areas it serves and a more environmentally friendly alternative to cars and planes. But it all comes with a very hefty price tag. The current official estimate, around $70 billion. Last week, in a damning report, the House of Lords Economic Affairs Committee declared that it was far from convinced the project could be delivered within budget and that it shouldn't go ahead without a new assessment of its costs and benefits. Former UK Finance Minister Alistair Darling is a member of that committee.
We say it's far better to look at this again, to look at what we actually need, which is more lines and better lines in the north rather than a fast link in the south, but also to look at whether or not you need to run at the line speeds they're proposing, and as well as looking at other factors that might reduce the cost of this, or at least keep the costs under control so we've got a chance of getting a railway that actually works.
Some critics, notably the UK's former Foreign Minister and likely Conservative Party leadership candidate Boris Johnson, think HS2's final price tag could end up double that current estimate. A new Prime Minister or a change of government could see Britain's high-speed railway revolution stopped in its tracks. Work is already underway on the new high-speed rail link here, just outside Euston train station, about a 15-minute walk from the BBC studios in central London. This is going to be the terminus for the London end of the new high-speed rail link. There'll be a completely new station built right here in front of me. At the moment, there's a lot of preparatory work going on with buildings being demolished. There's a big crane over there. Now, the project supporters say all of this is going to act as a catalyst for regeneration and growth in the area. Its critics, though, say that it strikes all the wrong notes.
There's something in the air, it's going round.
In a theatre just around the corner, a protest choir is rehearsing.
In the name of HS2, they're digging up the ground.
This choir is made up of about a dozen members of the local community. They're currently performing live on stage each night in a play which is critical of the UK's high-speed rail project. Resident Joe Herford is one of the choir's members.
HS2 has always been a solution looking for a problem to solve, as opposed to the other way around. It should have been, this is the problem, how can we fix it? The costs are enormous, so that's a huge amount of money that could be far better spent on other things.
It's an endless tide, even King Canute can't stop.
The environmental damage that HS2 is doing is quite unbelievable. There are so many ancient woodlands being cut down. I mean, an ancient woodland is something that you can never get back.
Some people might say, though, that any form of progress, you're going to get issues with cost, you're probably going to get issues with environmental problems, and that if people like you had their way, we'd probably still be getting around on horseback.
No, I don't think that's true. If we could see a benefit, you know, if we thought that it would actually do something, then okay, it might hurt us, but that would be okay because you'd have to...
It's going to cut journey times.
Yes, 20 minutes. That's not really very long. Someone could just get up 20 minutes earlier. It would be the same outcome for no money at all.
The UK government, though, says that, in fact, the new high-speed line will cut journey times between London and Birmingham, not by 20 minutes, but by 35. That's about 40% quicker. My colleague Sean Farrington has been to Birmingham to hear how HS2's chief executive responds to criticism of the project.
I'm on the construction site of what will be the Curzon Street station, part of the HS2 network. And this is a construction site that is the size of 4 football pitches, smack bang in the middle of one of the UK's biggest cities in Birmingham city centre. What do you do if you're in charge of all of that? I spoke to the chief executive of HS2, Mark Thurston.
HS2 is more than a railway. It's an economic project that's going to take 25 years. We're 10 years in. We've got at least 15 years to go. But for generations, we'll see the benefit of a railway that allows you to get from the centre of the country here in Birmingham to London, Leeds and Manchester in about 45-50 minutes. And that's going to just transform not just the economies of those cities, but actually the country as a whole.
But when the value for money tests were done, almost decades ago now, the productivity benefits of, getting somebody from Birmingham to London quicker are very different to what they would be now in terms of the amount of work you can get done on a train. We've got 5G communications coming in. People will be able to have crystal clear video conference calls without a hitch. Is it fair to say that those figures that were calculated all those years ago might not give us the value for money we think we're going to get out of it?
The business case for HS2 is really strong, at £92 billion worth of benefit for the economy, but it's really important.
But has it changed? That's the key thing.
No.
Why not, with all the technology developments?
Because the impact is on 2 levels. One is about what it will do to our transport system. So we've got to remember, we'll create capacity on the existing network. Of course, the other thing with that capacity we can do is bring freight onto the railway in off-peak periods, which it gets cars and lorries off our roads. So the benefits from a transport perspective are significant. And then you get, what we call the wider economic benefits, the regeneration effect. The place is transforming. HSBC are building their headquarters here. HMRC, the government's tax people, are bringing part of their headquarters here. There's a huge amount of regeneration going around the major cities.
Do you know what the cost of the project will be?
Does anyone know what the cost? I mean, we're very clear. The budget estimate is 56 billion. That's what we're working towards. That's a huge challenge for us.
That's the chief executive of HS2, Mark Thurston, speaking to the BBC's Sean Farrington. It's now time to depart the UK and hear how another European country has been getting on with building new super-fast rail links.
Estas imágenes son las primeras de un tren de alta velocidad.
A news report from Spanish television back in 1992 as Spain opened its first high-speed line from the capital, Madrid, to Seville in the south. Today, Spain has the second largest high-speed train network in the world after China. But this is also an intriguing tale of debt, corruption and ghost stations with only a handful of passengers each day. I've been hearing more from Professor Germa Bel. He's an expert on transport and infrastructure at the University of Barcelona.
In Spain, the extension of the high-speed rail network has been mainly a political and administrative project rather than an economic or a productive project. The main goal was to link the center of the country, the capital city, Madrid, with all capital of provinces within 4 hours, with no regard to prospective demand or of any kind.
So there aren't really enough passengers to justify the amazing network Spain has. I was reading that only 4 passengers a day get off at a new station connecting the former Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy's hometown with Madrid. Is that right?
There have been a lot of stories about these stations that have even less than 4, stations where the high-speed rail has actually never stopped. But if you take it generally speaking, the basic issue is that the numbers of overall users is extremely low.
Given what you've said about a lack of demand, the company in charge of railway infrastructure has debts of about $20 billion. Were there lots of people as these lines were being built saying, hang on, this is not a good idea?
At the beginning, in the first decade of the century, before the economic crisis, the opposition was very little. However, when the economic crisis did impact Spain, more and more people began questioning, began asking whether that had been a wise policy because so much money were needed. I'm not going to say at this point that most of the population does not agree with the extension of high-speed rail, but for sure I can say that opposition or discomfort is much higher, much bigger.
Professor Germa Bel from the University of Barcelona. The one thing you can be confident about when it comes to rail projects, wherever they are in the world, is that they will most likely bust the original budget. Bent Flubjerg is an expert on major building schemes at Oxford University's Said Business School. He's done the sums and reckons railway construction projects globally end up overspending by, on average, 45%.
You start digging when you put in a rail line and you find things underground that you didn't expect and so on. It could be the weather. It could be world market prices. People tend to be optimistic about the things that we just talk about. They're optimistic about how fast they can do things and so on. And sometimes people play politics with these projects. And that's where people deliberately decide to under-budget things to make them look good on paper because it's easier to get permission.
There are some examples of projects which have come in on time and on budget. Can you think of any off the top of your head around the world?
Some of the first TGV high-speed rail projects in France came in on budget. So that's for high-speed rail. For subways, underground rail systems, there's Madrid, which is famous worldwide for having built long stretches of metro to budget and to schedule.
So how did they manage it?
The person who was president of the Madrid Metro had the philosophy that he would not start a new stretch of the metro without a 30% contingency, so 30% extra money in a drawer, metaphorically speaking, that he would be able to draw on, because he argued that once they started building, they needed to be able to focus on that and have enough money, because if they turned out not to have enough money, they would get distracted from bad press, they would get distracted from having to raise new funds. That was his philosophy, and he was very rigid on this.
You're based in the UK. What's your instinct about the UK's second high-speed rail line, HS2? Do you think it will be built?
Right now, I would say that there's a political risk for high-speed 2. But, strong political parties have been behind it so far. If that continues, it probably will be built. But political coalitions like that can change overnight, so we never know.
Bent Flubjerg at Oxford University's Said Business School. Back in London at rehearsals with the anti-HS2 line choir, I asked singing protester Jo Herford if she thought her campaign had any chance of success.
It seems to me that so many people are realising now that HS2 was a very bad idea and the costs don't stack up. So I really do feel that it might be going to be cancelled soon, so I feel hope. And I always say that while there's one person who hasn't been evicted yet and while there's one tree still standing, it's not too late to cancel it.
Hold my hand while they take our land.
The Camden Community Choir and Jo Herford, an opponent of the UK's planned second high-speed rail link.